Okay, thanks everybody. Hi, it's Carol from STS. It's time to get started. This is the Adult Cardiac Surgery Database monthly webinar for May. Today is Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Just some fun, quick notes about Cinco de Mayo. It's an annual celebration of a Mexican Army's victory over the French Empire at the Battle of Puebla on May 5th, 1862. And we also celebrate Mexican American culture on today, and it generates more beer sales. It's on par with the beer sales from Super Bowl, and it's not to be confused with the Mexican Independence Day of September 16th. Fun facts. Okay, thanks for joining. So on the call with me today from STS, I have Jane Hahn, Leanne Jones, Emily Conrad, Melinda Offer, and Sydney Clinton. And then from IQVIA, we have Melanie, Joe, and Steve. I think that's everybody. Thanks all for joining. We're going to get started here. First, STS Important Updates, IQVIA update. We're going to talk about STARS Part 2 and then Q&A. So important dates. Today's our monthly webinar. We have a user group call on May 19th. The harvest closes on May 28th, and that will include data with OR dates through March 31st. And we have a monthly webinar on June 2nd, which is the same day as opt-out for Harvest 2. Harvest 4 2020 reports were released, I think 2 weeks ago. The week before last, or maybe last Monday. Last Monday, I think. Harvest 1 2021 just entered analysis at DCRI. We should have more of a time frame when that data will be back from DCRI. In the coming weeks. Typically, it takes six weeks for Harvest 1 to run analysis and star ratings at DCRI, and then it takes a few weeks once we get it back from DCRI to populate on the dashboards. But we'll have more of an update on the time frame probably on the June 2nd webinar. The audit notification letters and instructions have gone out. And then one of our exciting releases is that the ACSD public reporting refresh happened last week, and that includes Harvest 1 2020 data, which is OR dates through December 31st, 2019. Upgrade 2023 is going to start this fall, and if you have any suggestions, I've received a few, so thank you to those who did send me suggestions. If you have any suggestions, please send them to me by July 1st to be incorporated into the upgrade. And now I'm going to hand it over to Joe for the IQVIA updates. Joe?
Great, thank you very much. Let's see. Sorry, you got through yours very quickly. I was not ready.
You want me to go back and redo it?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Play some filler music. No.
Right, that was good. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Just to cover, I do have a few updates today to cover some updates that went into effect last month at the end of April. Just a quick note also at the top, all of this information is available and listed out for you in the notifications tab of the system. So if you log into the database and go there, you can review this at any time. So just to go through the list, starting with STS 5699, the DCRI inbound data set for Harvest 4 is now available. So that would be dates between October 1st, 2017 and September 30th, 2020. So for your risk-adjusted dashboard and benchmark reports, that is available as of the update last month. STS 6240, also along with that comes the new STS ACSD 4.20.2 data version, which is also available in those reports for those records after July 1st. And then STS 6407, and actually going on to the next slide, 6409 and 6368. For all three of these, we did add guidance to the reports pages, the parameter page where you're putting in your date and time, lost my train of thought. The quality ratings page, I got it, I'm good. The quality ratings page, the quality ratings details, and the ratings trend pages, as well as the parameters. On all of those screens, you will now see a notice for that Harvest 4 data set that says star ratings are only calculated for Harvest 1 and 3. And that is just to provide clarity that because when you run those star ratings and those quality ratings in those details, you will see at the top it says the ending date is June 2020, which is accurate. It does, because those updates weren't made because the star rating updates weren't done for the Harvest 4. So you will see that difference there. And then at the bottom of that slide, STS 6425, a footer was added to the following Nqf endorsed measure reports, the Cabbage outcomes measures and mortality outcome measures, to indicate that OR equals odds ratio. All right, STS 6366. The anesthesia report section had not been displaying correctly when a site is enrolled in anesthesia when you run the risk adjusted dashboard report, and so that should now be resolved for you. STS 6176, also related to the risk adjusted dashboard, we did have some sites reporting differences in the IMA and blood usage results, which has also been resolved. And then STS 6289, they corrected the quality ratings hover text. So when you hover your mouse over the bar graph, it was displaying an incorrect CI percentage, and that should now be accurate. All right, STS 6293, fixed an issue where the bar graph on the risk adjusted report displayed an incorrect range for the confidence interval for the STS aggregate results. STS 6389 fixed an issue where the report displayed 2 decimal values instead of just a whole number on the quality ratings details report. So for example, it would display 10.00 instead of just 10. And so now we've fixed that to make a little bit more sense. And STS 6421 fixed an issue where the beta blocker within 24 hours was only displaying in the graph instead of displaying both in the graph and the data table for the risk adjusted dashboard under the isolated Cabbage pre-operative medication section. STS 6424 fixed an issue where the overall graph color for each procedure type was for some reason not consistent across the board. And so now those should all be the same color.
Thank goodness for that.
Right, important issue. So just a couple issues that are under review that have been reported to us that we're looking into. STS 6573, the ACSD risk adjusted dashboard report is not displaying the observed rate in the risk adjusted and regional reports for the Harvest 1 and the Harvest 2 and 3 timeframes. There's a note there to let you know that this is working correctly in the Harvest 4. So the latest report does show this correctly, but we are looking into what's going on with the older ones that have been in there. STS 6512, the risk adjusted dashboard report is displaying an incorrect calculation for the missing percentage result for the classification NYHA variable. And the highlighted one here, 6562, we did want to let you know that we are looking into report calculations for the variables listed on the screen there, which would be race, smoking counseling, which is retired as of 6/30, left main disease, greater than 50% stenosis, mitral insufficiency and aortic insufficiency. So all of those are calculations that we are reviewing to make to check for accuracy and make sure that those are
Sorry.
properly. Okay. We haven't had our margaritas yet, I promise.
No, not yet.
STS 6306, the last one here, the ACS risk adjusted dashboard report is missing cases from the demographic benchmark report. So we did have a site that was reporting that they were seeing a different number of cases on their participant dashboard compared to when they look at the risk adjusted report. So we're looking into that one site's reported issue. But if you believe that you're seeing any discrepancies of that nature, please let us know. It may be related to this item.
Great, thanks. And Joe, thank you. And I'll go to the next slide in 1 second. I just want to touch on this 6562 a little bit further regarding race, smoking counseling, the left main disease, and mitral and aortic insufficiency. I think the first 3, I'm not sure about mitral and aortic, I'd have to double check, but the first 3 were changes between version 2.9 and 4.20.2. And it's the data was analyzed correctly. It's just being mapped. There's a mapping issue on the IQVIA side that they're checking into further because of the changes between versions. So this is common when we do a version change. And as you all know, the version from 2.9 to 4.20.2 was a very large change with race going to multi-fields, the smoking counseling field being removed, and we added in that new Nqf measure. And then the left main disease greater than 50 or equal to 50% stenosis is a new option, but we used to collect the stenosis as a free text field in previous versions. So it's a mapping issue, and it's not that the data that was analyzed is incorrect. It's just not displaying correctly. So they are correcting that, and you'll see off missingness rates and things like that. So just be patient as they work on these changes. Mapping can get really tricky as there's quite a few things that go into it, especially when you look at the programming side on the back end. So they are working on this, but just so you're aware, it will be corrected, and just asking for patience. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit further. Thanks.
Thanks for clarifying, adding that information. And our usual final slide here, if you do have items that we did not discuss today that you have experienced, please let us know. Submit a ticket to our email address, and we will take a look at that for you. And also, if you have reported something that we didn't mention here, we are looking into it. We just can't list everything out on these webinars. So just please rest assured that we are looking into those items. And if you do need any status updates, feel free to reach out in response to the tickets you've created, and we'll get back to you.
Great, thank you. Okay, and now I'm going to go into the Nqf measures, where stars come from, part 2. We talked about Nqf measures in April's monthly webinar, the beginning of April, and now we're going to talk just to refresh your memory, Nqf measures are the measures that are used in the star calculations. And that determines that it was the document that provided the numerator and denominators and the exclusion criteria. That's been posted on the STS website under the adult cardiac resource documentation, or additional resources for adult cardiac version 4.20.2. And I'll show you where that's at in just a moment. But first I want to go through how stars are calculated. And I just want to talk a little bit, and then I'll show you where that information is at on the STS page. And then I'm going to walk through the national report overview for Harvest 1 and the national report overview document that's posted on the IQVIA resource library, because it's a lot of information, and I just want to walk through it to explain how to read it and what you need to look for. So stars are calculated. It's all the sites who submitted for the current harvest. That's what's going to make up the cohort. It looks at your site's risk of the patient and the outcomes. This is going to make up your observed to expected ratio. We also call it O to E, or O/E, or O to E. So it looks at your patient, the risk of that patient, the outcomes of that patient, and then when we risk adjust, the risk adjustment is what is going to tell us what was the expected for that patient with those types of risks. And if you met the expected, if you did better than what was expected, or if you did worse than what was expected, and that comes out to be your observed to expected ratio. So you would want an O to E of less than 1 is what's better than expected. An O to E equal to 1 is what is expected. And an O to E greater than 1 is worse than expected, which means your observed rates were higher than your expected rates. We use these values, they used to calculated weighted average, and then those averages are compared against the other sites in a hierarchical manner. And I'll show you where to find what that all means in a second, because we have it pretty well laid out in the report overview. So let me just give you an example. This is the Cabbage composite measure. And as if you recall, when we talked about the Nqf measures in April, hold on, I want to pull this guy over here. When we talked about the Nqf measures in April, we looked at a document that we looked at this page, and you'll see that the measure types are outcomes process, and it's a composite. And then we also looked at on this new document that was posted the week following the webinar. We looked at the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So this is the STS Adult Cardiac version 4.20 data collection resources. Underneath additional resources, I posted this Nqf Endorsed Measures page. And as you recall, this is what we reviewed the last time. And we went through each of these. We talked about what the measure is, the denominator, and then the numerator, and the exclusion criteria. And I don't know how to get rid of this. There we go. And then if we're going to look at the composite, so the measure name is on the left, the title's on the left. And these are all things that go into the composite measure. So I don't know if we have it listed as such, or if it's just, if we're just going to go over it. Hold on one second. I don't think we listed out just as the composite, but I'll tell you what's in it. So the composite measure, it looks at your mortality, your morbidity, your internal mammary use, and your meds. The morbidity includes things that are this is where you'll find exactly what measures go into the composite. This was under the STS homepage, quality and safety performance measures. And then you'll have a list of the performance measures. These will match up to that Nqf sheet that we had here. So for example, if we're gonna, sorry for the scrolling, if we're gonna look at risk-adjusted post-operative renal failure, we can find that here as well, and it will be the same information. Maybe I can find it. Maybe not. There it is. There's a second one, post-operative renal failure, and it'll be the same information, just in a sort of different format. But when we're looking at the composite measure, you can see all of these. So preoperative medication, it's all of these 4 Nqf measures. This is an all or none measure, meaning that if the patient isn't contraindicated for use, if for one of these medications, all of these medications are looked at if they met that measure. So if the pre-op beta blocker was given, the beta blocker at discharge, again, this is Cabbage, antiplatelet medication or anti-lipid treatment medication at discharge. And if there was no contraindications for use of any of these, each of these has to be met in order to meet this portion of the calculation. And that calculation, the weight of that calculation is this 0.3 times med. So you have to meet it. You have to meet all of the medications, and this is the weight of the medications within your composite score. And then we look at internal mammary use. This is the Nqf measure number 0134. The weight of that within your composite measure is 0.07 use of your internal mammary. So this is 80%. The mortality has just a little over 80%. This is about 10%. Nope, I'm saying that wrong. These all equal 7, 8, 9, 10. I must have typed something wrong, but so the meds are all of the meds have to be met. The internal mammary has to be met. And then the morbidity is an all or none as well. So if any of these happened, the weight is adjusted for any of these events happening. It doesn't matter if one or more, 1, 2, or 3 of these events happened, it has the same impact on your outcomes. And then we can look the same thing for the other composite measures for AVR and MVR as well. And then it looks at, so it gets your score, and then it looks at all of the other sites in the cohort and it compares score. And now I'll show you in the national report overview, because this is very statistical, and it takes a little bit of it has taken me a couple times to review this in the national report overview to really understand it. And even today, I can't fully explain it because it is so technical, but the report overview does a really nice job explaining that. So I want to show you on the IQVIA platform the first thing I want to show you is, when you log in, you select your site, and I'm going to go to, this is the STS site, the notifications tab that we've been talking about, that Joe says everything is posted on the notifications tab. This is where you'll find that. And this is the 426 is when I think this is when we released the Harvest 4 data. So I know emails weren't sent out for Harvest 4, but this is where you would find that notification. And we'll talk more about that after we get through the report overview. And then under resources library is where you're going to find all these additional resources related to the platform. And the one that in the previous PDFs, there used to be probably I think it was about 70 pages of information prior to your report. And that information is now posted here underneath the risk, where did it go? The National Report Analysis Overview. So this is where you're going to find all that, the pre-information that was previously included in the national reports that you would receive on a quarterly basis. We slimmed it down quite a bit. Let me see if it pulled it up for me here. Slimmed it down quite a bit, pulled out a lot of duplicate information and information that was already posted that may change frequently. But I want to show you this because it's this is probably going to be a document that you're going to need to refer to both for your star rating calculation questions, things that are updated per harvest and all of that. And I already see, so, the first page or the second page of this, it shows you when things are updated. Now, the Nqf endorsed measures were only updated Harvest 1 and 3 previously, but for some reason this Harvest DCRI updated them on Harvest 4 data. I'm not sure why, but it's there. So we decided we would share that with you. So the first page of the National Report Overview, this will show you what's updated, when it's updated, so you know what to expect and when it's coming back. When it should be coming back to you. We talk about participant specific cardiac procedures. These are the procedures that are analyzed. There's 7 procedure types. Right now, we don't have a double valve. These are all ones that we have the risk models on. So those are the ones you'll be getting data back on. Talks to you about regional outcomes, other procedures, and then what's a patient population. This is all really good information. You can go ahead and review it. But for purposes of this call, we're gonna kind of scroll pretty quickly down to the star rating information. Reporting levels, your participant, how you determine what your like group is, definition of your like group, how we determine what a region is, and if you don't have enough, if your state does not have enough sites, then it would be included in a region. Otherwise, it would be reported out per state. For example, Illinois is reported out as Illinois, but maybe one of these other states does not have enough sites to provide a meaningful comparison. So they would be compared to the entire Great Lakes region. How missing data is handled, inclusion, exclusion criteria. Checks that are performed, what mean, median, 25th and 75th percentile mean, how the comparisons are performed, and then risk adjustment. This will go into how risk adjustment is performed, getting your ODEs and your observed rates. And it gives you really good information in this document about what the difference is between ODEs and ORs, and which is the observed rate, and why we report on both of them, even though they report similar information, but they're slightly different. This document will provide that information. This is the model endpoints. This document is also provided. The endpoint is things like mortality, stroke, renal failure. And then we get into, we had 2 different models. The 2008 model went through version 2.81. We started with the 2018 model in version 2.9, which was July of 2017. It gives you just a little bit of different, little bit of information on the differences or what's within that model, how missing data was handled in each of the models. So for instance, if we didn't have the right information to calculate your the body surface area, and the gender was available, then we would set it to 1.75 meters squared. If it was a male, we would set it to 2.0 meters squared. Same thing with ejection fraction and creatinine. The reason we need to imputate these calculations is so that we can get the risk, we can do the risk calculation, so we can calculate the star ratings. And then how missing data was handled, how missing data is handled for the 2018 models. And we get a little bit more in this current model regarding the lab values. And then we talk about how the risk models function, discrimination and calibration of the models, the predicted risk values, and risk adjusted summaries. This is where you'll find the information about O to E ratios and estimated odds ratios and how we compare those, even though, as it says, both of them have their advantages. And it talks about the advantages of both and what those mean. So when you're in your report overview and you see those values provided, you'll be able to understand. I suggest reviewing that document so you can understand what, I don't know if I'll have O to E's or I might have them, but they'll be very much the same for STS because it's the STS is the national average. But as you're reviewing your own reports, you'll be able to understand what all of those data mean regarding the O to E's and your observed rate. And then how you comparison of them. So a couple things that I wanted to point out here is that the hierarchical models, we use hierarchical models, which means we have to have all of the data in the database from the harvest to calculate the star ratings, to get the observed to expected rates, and to get the your observed to expected rates and your odds ratio. We can only run the models one time. So if you go in and update your data, the data that's in the warehouse at the time of harvest close is what's used to calculate the risk scores. Because it's a hierarchical model, we can't go back and add in updated data because it takes it at a point in time. And the way the models work, we have to use the data right at the time of harvest close to calculate that. If you go in and update previous data, it would be reflected on the next outcomes report and next star ratings calculation if it falls within that time frame. It talks here about odds ratio interpretations and then risk adjusted rates. This is really a heavy read, but I think just taking it a section at a time will really help you understand the data and how your star ratings are calculated, so you can speak to your surgeons and your administration more clearly to help them better understand the outcomes and what they mean. There's samples here about 3 different sites who have, it goes through each of these, the number of procedures, the number of outcome events, the observed mortality, the expected mortality. So you can see this site had an observed mortality of 1.0, but their expected mortality was actually 3.4, which means that they're going to have a much lower O to E, much lower than 1, and you can see it's 0.29, which is very, very good. So they're probably going to be a 1-star site when you look at the outcomes of all the other. I'm sorry, probably going to be a 3-star site when you look at the outcomes of the other sites that they're being compared to. And it goes into detail. It explains about participant A, participant B, and participant C, and what their scores mean, and how, and it shows, so like they're lower than expected mortality. When they do this calculation, it looks like it's going to be statistically significantly less, did I say that right? Less than what the STS expected is for that site. And that would mean that since it's lower than expected and it's statistically significant, meaning it falls outside of the expected ranges, it's going to put them at a 3-star. And then it'll talk to you, you'll go through here that participant B is not statistically significant. So it's likely that they're probably going to fall within that they're probably going to fall within a 2-star rating, but I would go through and read these, and it's great reference. And then it talks about extreme values, and this is extreme values when we have when we get to extreme values, and this is kind of where we get into talking about those values that they're so far outside of the expected ranges that when models perform out that far, they're not very stable, which means that there's some higher chance for variability, and it will go into it talks to you more about that and how to understand that in your data. It talks about calculated variables, so BMI, multiple races, length of stays, things like that. How we calculate some of those fields that you may not see. And then starting on this is page 29 of 39. We're gonna start talking now about the quality reporting, and this is the Cabbage. This is where I got that information about the Cabbage composite, and it goes over. There's a nice overview over here. It talks about the populations, which we've already done, and this is specific to Cabbage. Right now, it's a 12-month time period, but we are going to 36 months, which is coming soon. We put that note here, and we also put down that we're going to a 95% confidence interval versus a 98%. Further up in this document, we talk about confidence intervals and what that means. What's the difference between a 98% confidence interval and a 95%, and the wideness of those confidence intervals in determining your star ratings. This is where you'll find information about the fields that go into data completeness and that 2% that's required. You'll also find here information regarding the number of cases. So 10% isolated Cabbage cases are required to get a star rating. And if you've had more than 5% missing in any of the 5 Nqf endorsed process measures, which is listed here, you're at risk, you'll be excluded from analysis. So it's not just that 2% on the mortality fields. We need to also look at the five Nqf endorsed measures, the internal mammary, and then the medication that are used. These are the process measures. And that could restrict you from, that could block you from getting a star rating as well. If you meet those requirements, you also have to meet the 2% or less on the mortality fields to be included in star rating calculations. If you do not, if you have a higher than 2% rating, you will not be included in analysis. I highly recommend that when this is harvest 1 and starting in harvest 3, we're going to go to a rolling 12 months instead of 12 months of 6 months of data from 1 year and 6 months of data from the other year, looking at 2%, which within each of those years, we're going to be combining that those 2 6 months period to a rolling 12 months and looking at the 2% across those 12 months instead of 2% in each of those 6 months that make up the harvest 3 data. I highly suggest that on your data harvest, your harvest summary report, where you can see the missingness for each of these fields, MTDC stat, MT30 stat, and MTOpD. If any of these are close to 2%, you are at risk for not receiving, even if it's under 1%. I'm sorry, even if it's under 2%, I strongly suggest that you go in and check the status of those patients so you are not inadvertently excluded when the data goes to analysis. It has happened where once in a while DCRI will, once they review the data, they may put a case over into the other category. Say a Cabbage was performed, and for some reason IQVIA is calling it an isolated Cabbage, but when it goes to analysis, DCRI is going to call it an other case because maybe another procedure was performed and IQVIA just didn't have the programming right, or whatever it is that happens. It's even happened when DCRI was our data warehouse, and moving that one case from your Cabbage denominator can actually cause you to go above that 2% missingness if you were even close prior to that occurring. So it's really important to go in and make sure that if you are even close to that 2%, you do your best to get way below it prior to analysis harvest close. you will receive analyzed data back, but you will not receive a composite quality score or a participant rating. This also is important. We talked about it back in, I think, January or the beginning of February about if you go in and you update data after the harvest closes, it will not be reflected in that harvest that had already closed. So it's really important to make sure you pay attention to the harvest close dates and get any cleanup done prior to that time so you don't accidentally get left in the dust when they do calculations. It talks about quality domains and study endpoints. So absence of mortality, domain 1. Domain 2 is absence of morbidity. Domain 3 is internal mammary usage. And domain 4 is the perioperative medications. It talks that how they're used, the operative mortality is a single endpoint, major morbidity and medications are composite endpoints, and internal mammary is a single endpoint. And then it goes into more detail about those and what they all mean. And this is where you get the overall composite score and how it's calculated. I did type it wrong. It was supposed to be 0.1, not 0.01. Whoopsie. So 0.81 is the score of the mortality. So that's 81%, 10% score for your morbidity, 7% score for your internal mammary usage, and 3% for your meds. So the obviously mortality has a higher impact on your outcome score for the Cabbage composite. Morbidity, which is any morbidity that was listed, is the second highest, and your medications are the lowest. And then it goes into star ratings and how star ratings are calculated. It says here that star ratings are derived by testing whether the participant's composite or domain score, this guy, and these are all your domains, the 4 domains, is significantly different from the overall STS average. So if you have 4 composite score domains and your participant's estimated score is lower than the overall average, but the difference between the participant and STS is not statistically significant, the rating would be a 2-star. If, however, the overall composite, the point estimate is lower than STS average and statistically significant, that would be a 1-star. And if you had a greater score and it was statistically significant, you would receive a 3-star. There is no way to calculate the star ratings by yourself because it's a hierarchical model, which means you need to have all of the scores you have to have everybody's score to get the STS score, which is how your rating is determined off of that STS score. And then it goes into the same information regarding the valve and valve plus Cabbage models. This is where you'll find information, the time period. I get a lot of questions about, did I have enough cases to be included? Data completeness and the case counts are provided here. This is page 33 out of 39 of that document. And you'll see 10 isolated AVRs, AVR cabbages, or MVRRs or MVRR cabbages. MVRR results are only reported for participants with at least 36 procedures in the time period. The time period is 36 months. And MVRR plus Cabbage results, you have to have at least 25 procedures within that time frame. It talks to you about thresholds, which are the same for the mortality fields. And then it'll go into the Cabbage, the overall composite scores, how those are calculated. The composite scores, remember, we don't have process measures for the valve or valve plus Cabbage models. We only use outcomes measures, which is the mortality or the morbidity, the mortality and the morbidity. The morbidity are listed here, any cardiac reoperation, renal failure, deep sternal wounds, prolonged event, and cerebral vascular or stroke. That's what we're looking for there. So if any one of these occurs, then you suffer the consequences of that. And then mortality is included in there as well. And it'll talk to you again, it's the same information about if you're statistically significant or not, and if you're better or worse than the STS average, how that's calculated into a star rating. And then this goes into, this is actually a really, this will tell you about the one run policy that I spoke about earlier regarding why it can only be generated one time following harvest 1 and 3, and how data submitted late or data found to be in error cannot be updated after the composite quality scores have already been run. So if you do update the data in the warehouse after harvest close, it would go, and it was in the time frame for that next star rating period, it would be updated there, but not in the current harvest run. And it talks here about hierarchical model and what that all means, that it's run on the entire STS database. Similar results cannot be obtained at your site using risk adjustment capabilities or your vendor software. And then it talks about what the Bayesian credible intervals are. And this is actually, this is really good information, and it talks to you about the 95 or 98% credible interval, what it means. If it's 98%, you have 1% on either side to make up that 100%. And it talks to you about, it'll go over this in much more detail than I'm capable of explaining. And it's very good information to understand if you're interested in what that 98 or 98% for Cabbage right now. We will be going to 95 and 95% for valve and valve plus Cabbage. And then the Nqf measures, we've talked about those and what that all means, but there's more information here spelled out in a different way. And I think that's pretty much it. So I'm going to stop there and I'll take questions, and hopefully they're not too difficult. And I know what else I wanted to show you all. So that's, let's see if I can go back here. So that was under library, and that's the Acsd National Report Analysis Overview. And that will provide you the information that we just went over. Then I want to go back to the STS website and show you the public reporting, because we're very proud of the Sydney Clinton, who's on the line with us, led this project and did a great job working with surgeon leadership on the public reporting refresh. So under sts.org, under registries and STS public reporting, this page has been updated. For some reason, my page is not updating, but the ACSD refresh has occurred. So if you click on this and you go into adult cardiac, we added this very nice map, which will show you sites within certain areas. It's really great for patients if they're looking for close sites, or sites within their area. And then if you go into your hospital, that if you've consented to public reporting, you would be listed here. And just pick the first one. It gives you more information about what the star ratings mean. You have a map of exactly where the hospital is located. And then they did a very nice overhaul of this whole page and providing the STS score, the site score, the confidence intervals. And it has hover capability too, so you can see what all this means. So this is, participant score, STS average. This is for Cabbage, we do 98% confidence interval, and you can see that they are falling within the same spot as STS, which means they would be a 2-star. You can see here, this is this STS average. This is the participant score. The 95% confidence interval is outside of, does not include the STS. So better is to the left. So they would be a 1-star. And I don't see any 3 stars for that site, but if we did, we would see that the STS would be way over here. Let's see if we can find a 3-star site for you. I'm gonna pick, I don't know. Anybody get 3 stars that you know of? There we go. So this site has a required perioperative medications, which is one of our process measures. You can see their score here, better to the left. The 95% confidence interval is that blue box behind it. They're outside. The STS is to the right, which means the STS average is not as high as the SICE average, which gives them a 3-star. Same thing here. They just made a 3-star rating. Did well here. So whoever that site is, good job. So that, very excited to have that updated, and it contains data from Harvest 1 2020, which is OR dates through December 31st, 2019. So I think we're going to go to questions now, if that's okay with the other folks on the call. We have quite a few, so I'll get through as many as we can. So notification was not sent out regarding the Harvest 4 release. It was posted on the notification tab in the IQVIA platform, but that's not quite ideal. So what we're going to do in the future is we send out weekly emails regarding the upcoming webinars for that week, and we'll be sure, so we're not overwhelming folks with emails. We'll be sure to include those notifications of Harvest release, which within those weekly emails to sites. The analysis overview document shows that Nqf measures are only for Harvest 1 and 3, but the Harvest 4 report had Nqf measures. Is this a change? Yeah, we weren't expecting that back from DCRI, but because they provided it, we updated the Nqf page. The risk score match report says 100%, but does not allow to choose the date range. How do we know the 100% match is for which quarter data? IQVIA?
Hi, this is Melanie. I can answer that one. So it's not, for the risk score match, it's not based on quarters. It's just based on the specific time frame for the data version. So it's looking across the entire data version. So it's going to give you the results for 2.9, and it's going to give you all results for 4.20.2. There is no additional field to allow you to go in and put in specific dates. It's just looking across the data version that covers that surgical time period.
Great, thank you. And there's another question. I'm not sure if this is an issue, a known issue or not, about the risk score match report being fixed.
Did they give a ID or?
No, if you could submit it, yeah, if you could submit a ticket ID or the issue that you're referring to, would be happy to check into that for you. Why is Harvest 2 not in the star rating? So star ratings are only calculated on Harvest 1 and Harvest 3 for adult cardiac. So you will not receive a star rating for Harvest 2 or 4. We do it on half-year data and calendar year data. Still can't see the 2020 Harvest report. When and how the notifications were sent, I didn't receive one. So the Harvest report for Harvest 4 of 2020, which is data through September 30th, was released last week. Notifications were not sent, but we had a little bit of a communication error, and we'll be sure to notify sites when those reports are updated in the future in the weekly email that we send out regarding upcoming webinars. So we will let you know when that occurs. But you should have access to the Harvest 4 report, which under operational reports, the risk adjusted dashboard. And then this is the Harvest 4 is the date range through 9/30/2020. It appears that the data for length of stay less than 6 on the report is actually reflective of the patients that did not meet the measure. Can you submit this, Bonnie? Or do you know about this one, Melanie?
No.
Okay, yeah, you might want to submit that. If you notice that, could you please submit it to the IQVIA support so they can start a ticket on it and follow up with you.
Right, and we would need to know.
Oh, I know what else I wanted to talk about before I get to questions. Speaking of support, so here's the IQVIA plan. Just a note that we have another email specific just to adult cardiac. IQVIA has changed their internal process just slightly by adding a dedicated person for each of the databases. So adult cardiac has their own email. Both of these emails will work, but if you have a question to reach out to them, this ACSD tech support at IQVIA.com will be a good email to email now. I added it there as well. Can you please show the slide with the upcoming events and dates for May, which was in the beginning of the program? Yes. Okay. 6467, the issue with, the issue with the risk model scores with an original at IQVIA. What is the status of that issue, please?
Let me take a look, unless someone from our support team has already checked that out, but let me take a look and see.
Okay, and I should probably update the slide so I don't confuse people. Oopsie, where'd it go? There we go. That's better. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm trying to print my risk adjusted report and it shows that I'm looking at data in the quarter ending September 2020. But what it pulls up to print says data ending June 2020. Is it wrong data or wrong titles? And Beth, I think that one also has to be submitted to support if you haven't done so already. But I've seen some emails come through.
This is Joe. I would say also that, just as I noted when we were going through the update items earlier, anything that related to star ratings, your quality details and those things will say June 2020 at the top because they weren't updated for September 2020. And so if you're looking at the very top of that report and it says June 2020, it might just be because you're looking at a section that has to do with star ratings that wasn't updated. But anything under risk adjusted benchmark should have the September 2020 date on it.
Thank you.
But as Carol said, if you're looking at those and you're seeing June 2020, definitely give us a ticket so we can look into it further.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And why is the risk adjusted report displaying percentages for Cabbage interop IAB missing? I think if we're noticing issues on the reports, it's really best to reach out to IQVIA and submit a ticket if it's something that we haven't already covered, because I don't know why it keeps doing this. Because it's likely that IQVIA may not even be aware of the issue. So if you're noticing it, it's really good to submit it to them. But Joe, are you aware, or Melanie, are you aware of this interop balloon pump missing?
No.
Okay.
I'm not.
Yeah, I would submit that, Michelle, to IQVIA. Either I would try the ACSD tech support at IQVIA.com, please. In the previous versions with Duke, we were able to find our 30-day mortality easily to see if we had met the percentage required to obtain. I am unable to locate this information in the new version with IQVIA. So would you please take us through the process if this is a long process for the webinar? So it is, I would say that we would want to either go to the missing variable report or the participant dashboard, but I think it's added in the participant dashboard, that combined field. Yeah. So when you go there and say, we're just going to select I don't know who's, if I would, hold on one second. In the participant dashboard, let's say we select a time frame. I'm just going to select a small time frame and we select our procedures. I'm looking at isolated Cabbage. And we're going to look for the mortality missingness, and that would be under this discharge mortality tab. IQVIA added in a field to combine the three mortality fields that we look at for missingness. They made one field for you, right, Melanie?
Yes. So if you were to scroll down, I think within this section here.
There it is. So these are the fields that you're looking at. It's the Mort Op-D field, which is this one. It's the
Mortality plus died in hospital.
That's for all of your mortalities. Make sure I pull up the right field. So it's the MTDC stat, which is your status at discharge, your 30-day status, and your mort op death fields. So you're looking at your status at discharge, which is this field, which here's your missingness here. And you have to meet it on all three of these. The mort op D1 is this field, which is this is your missingness here. And then did I say more? The mortality 30-day status is this field here. And here is your missingness here. So you're going to look at the mortality status. I wonder if we can, maybe we can talk about changing these colors to like bright red or something to, I don't know if that's possible or not, Melanie, but maybe we can take it back in an elaboration call and see if we can somehow highlight those fields a little bit differently.
Okay.
Just an idea. So it's this field here, this mortality status at 30 days, this MT-OP-D, and the discharge status at hospital discharge, which I'll have to have less than 2% or less of missingness. So and the missingness for that one is the last line. Okay, please clarify that the re-op for non-cardiac issues are not included in the re-op category. I don't know if they're not, they might be reported in the re-op category, but they're not included in the Nqf measures or in the outcomes measures or in the star ratings. What kind of access to data do the surgeons have if they don't participate in MIPS? In other words, what do they see and who is the best person to contact if they need help to set up an account? IQVIA. So they see all of these, they just don't have upload or access, correct, Melanie?
They don't participate in MIPS. They would see all of those same reports.
Yeah, they just don't have upload or access. They have read-only access. And if they need help setting up their account, they can, they were all sent email at, login information, but for some reason, some of those went to spam when they were sent, or they didn't respond to them. So if they need help setting up their accounts to get their login information again, they can reach out to stsdb@sts.org. This email address here. My mouse is killing me today, guys. I'm sorry. Can we please? Yes. So we will send emails. We will send emails out on the weekly updates. Where is that document located? It's on the IQVIA platform under library and under the National Report Analysis Overview. Okay.
And Carol, just before we end, because I know we're coming to time, in regards to the issue for, I believe the initials was KBA for STS 6467 with the risk model scores, that is specific to an update that will be made. We are working with the development team to determine the timing. We were working with the ARMIS vendor, I believe, but it was applicable where we were seeing discrepancies with PROC ID 3. So we will be rerunning the calculations to make sure that the updates that were made for PROC ID 3 is also reflected in the risk score match report. So just wanted to give clarification there. We will post a notification in regards to the timing related to the deployment for that ID of 6467.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. And I'm just going to take some more questions. You guys don't have to stay on, and I'll skip over the IQVIA questions. But if you want to, I'm just going to probably stay on for about 5 more minutes and see if we can answer a few more of these. The 3-year report for the Cabbage will be starting with Harvest 3 2021. So OR dates through June 30th, 2021. To get back to the main report tab, if you're in these reports here, it'll open down here in a different tab. So this will still be open, but say you're in another operational report and it looks, you get this bar on the side here. Let's see if it does it. It's just this first tab here will take you back to that view. So Julia, the percent missing for the DCRI versus IQVIA procedure type and determining the 2% missing is not fair. So I showed you where to find that on the participant dashboard, and you can look at those 3 fields and determine your missingness. The harvest for multiplier tables, I haven't seen that come over from DCRI yet, but we will follow up with them on that one. Why do all the composite scores weighted calculate equal 100% of the Cabbage composite? So that should be, that is 100%. I'm trying to export the latest outcomes report for time period ending September 20th, and it's not loading. I saw a couple people put that through too earlier on one of the listservs. Maybe Melanie already went, but I'll pass this off to Joe. And if you could just submit this to IQVIA as a ticket, if you're having issues, that would be great.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Will the volume numbers change when STS goes to a 3-year average? Yes, they will. That's why we're going to a 3-year average. Star ratings, please confirm that star ratings are calculated after COVID-19 patients are removed. Yes, that's correct. COVID-19 patients are removed before the data goes to analysis. Will the report or IQVIA site identify how many patients are removed from calculation for COVID? And yes, IQVIA has that as one of our, as in one of their upcoming releases. They will be releasing, they will be including those COVID patients. So you can filter by your outcomes with the benchmarked outcomes, not the risk adjusted outcomes. They'll be able to filter those by COVID with or without the COVID positive patients. Is the benchmark data on the risk adjusted? Is the benchmark data on the report risk adjusted? Some of it is. If it's included in the risk model, you'll find it in the risk model variable document that's posted on the STS website. Not everything is risk adjusted. So if it is risk adjusted, it would be those Nqf measure outcomes that are risk adjusted. I have a case that popped up that was somehow missed back in September 20 that needs to be abstracted and submitted. Can I submit that at any time into IQVIA? Is there a penalty for submitting a case late? No, you may go ahead and submit that case. There is no penalty for submitting that case late. The only thing is that if you were to be audited and that case was not in the warehouse, that would cause you a mismatch on your audit. What are the percent of participating hospitals that are 1, 2, 3 stars? Just curious. So we do post that. I think it's this Harvest Composite Quality Ratings Summary. This is Harvest 3, which was the last time we did star ratings. Again, this is under the library. And let's see if that opens for us. And this will show you the number of sites that met those star measures, met the star rating that you're looking for. So again, that was under libraries and the Harvest 3 Composite Quality Rating Summary. I'm not clear on how a site can be 100% compliant and still not receive 3 stars. So if a site, it has to do with not just that you're being compliant, but also the sites that are in the measure are also compliant, and also the risk of your patients that are going into those outcomes. That's what makes up your star rating. So it's not just that you were 100%, that you met the measure 100% of the time, but it's how you're compared to the other sites, including your observed to expected ratios with both outcomes and the risk of those patients. So if you're 100% compliant, you do lower risk cases, and you have another site that's 100% compliant and they do higher risk cases, the site who has the higher risk cases is going to have a better outcome. That's one of the reasons why we are going to a 36-month Cabbage measure to include more cases. The more cases you include, the higher likelihood that your risk of cases will be balanced out better with all of the cases that the sites are doing across the cohort. So So yeah, I just talked about volumes, low volumes versus high volumes, and why we're going to a 36-month reporting period. They do expect that low volume sites will be able to have a better chance of getting 3-star ratings compared to the higher volume sites when we switch over to this 36-month rating, because you'll have more cases in your cohort to get a better sample, a better adjustment of your outcomes. So you should, I'm not getting the emails. I go to the STS website and look for educational webinars. Is there a reason why I'm not getting emails? So if you're listed as the backup or primary contact, you should be getting emails. For some reason, those emails might be getting blocked at your site. If you're listed in that position, they are being sent to you. They may be getting blocked at your site, or there may be some type of wall if your site blocked our emails 3 times and we stopped sending them to you through our server. So that might be why. But if you'd like to reach out to me, I can put you in touch with marketing and we can figure it out for you. What is the goal of benchmark data? So you look at benchmark data for quality improvement. You want to see how your site's doing compared to other sites within both your like group, which is determined by the number of cases you do, and the if you're a teaching or non-teaching hospital, and also against the STS average. So in looking at your data, so you say I create comparing summary data of our site with the STS and like groups, which I understand that it's also not risk adjusted. Am I correct? There are some things in that data that are risk adjusted. So it depends what you're looking at, which data you're looking at. If you're looking at your stroke rate, that is risk adjusted. If you're looking at things like blood usage, that is not risk adjusted. So it all depends on what you're looking at. And then you use that for quality improvement, which it sounds like you're doing already, Julia. When will 2021 Harvest 1 report be released? So that will be, it's an analysis at DCRI now, and we'll have a better update in the coming weeks for the timeline. In the IQVIA report, the print is so tiny and there's so much white space on both the PDF. I suggest reaching out to IQVIA at ACSD Tech supported IQVIA, and they can help you with the printing functionality on that, maybe helping you with font sizes and things. If you can get the text larger, it would be excellent. I can't read anything on the site. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Beth, but you can always zoom in to make things larger if you need to by going to view and zoom in. Okay. Is the risk adjusted rate the expected / predicted rate, right? So it's the expected rate and the observed rate. So expected and predicted is the same, but you have the expected, we report out both the observed to expected rate, and we report out the odds ratio. To understand the difference between those two, I suggest reviewing wherever the heck it went, the National Report Analysis Overview, to understand the difference between odds ratio and observed to expected rates. Both are useful and both provide similar information in a different way. So Jeanette, if you could please email stsdb@sts.org regarding your question on invoices, they'll be able to check into that for you. How do we know if our provider participates with MIPS? Is that mandatory? MIPS is not mandatory, and MIPS reporting is closed right now. And it's different from public reporting in that the MIPS reports are surgeon level. Public reporting is for your site or participant based, but MIPS is just related specifically to the surgeons. And you could check with your surgeon if they participate in MIPS, but otherwise you could reach out to stsdb@sts.org and we'll be able to answer that question for you by checking our records. Within the mortality missingness fields are unknown mortality fields combined with missing blank mortality fields to calculate. Yes, so unknown and missing are combined to calculate your missingness, because unknown is considered missing for those fields. What do we do if our risk adjustments don't match? So I think you're talking about your risk match score report. And if they don't match, you should reach out to IQVIA at ACSD Tech Support at IQVIA.com. H3 used to be helpful, but after moving to IQVIA, it became so confusing. Can you either eliminate it or do it the old way? I'm not sure what you mean by that. So if you could clarify what H3, how it became confusing and what you want us to do with it. Can we submit the past 3 years with updates on the mortality status? Sure, you can go all the way back to, I think we have version 2.81 in the IQVIA warehouse. So you can go all the way back to July 2014 and update any data you'd like. So the site format was updated separate from the update of the data. I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you're talking about mapping that occurs between the versions, yes, that always occurs between, we do the update of the form separate from the update of any reports. And this just happens to be an electronic report on a dashboard, but the same thing occurred previously with the reports in DCRI, both the data quality reports and the quarterly reports. I'm not sure if I got your question, Sheila, but you can clarify. So Heather, that question regarding the number of 3 stars for both Cabbage and isolated AVR, we are no longer reporting that out. But you can find the other information in that link that I showed you on in the library. And then can we print our September 2020 report in one document? And I think you can reach out to IQVIA at ACSD Tech Support at IQVIA.com, and they'll be able to help you with that. There is an export all button that should print it out in one full swoop there. Okay, so I think I'm going to finish there. We only went over by 15 minutes, and I appreciate everybody that stayed on with me. We're going to end it there, and I hope you all have a nice rest of the day. Thank you for everyone who joined. Please take care, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.
Great call, Carol.
Thanks. Thank you for staying on.
No worries. Have a good day.
Hanging out with me.
Wouldn't miss it.
I know you wouldn't. Oh, Chrissy has one. If the COVID patients that are excluded, is this pre-COVID and post-COVID? Are there timeframes? Yes, any COVID is excluded. So any of those yeses for the COVID field is excluded from analysis, pre-COVID and post-COVID patients. Well, you're welcome, Bonnie. You're welcome, Diana. All right. Thanks all. Bye.
Bye, Carol.